So we are talking to Poorvi Chothani today. She's an immigration lawyer with offices in Mumbai and in Florida. We are going to ask her today about a very important issue. This is to do with students who are in the US on campuses studying there. Um, we do know that next month there's going to be Christmas and New Year breaks across the US at the universities. So many of these students would look at traveling to India, to their homes for the vacations, or perhaps to attend events, weddings in the family. So over the last couple of months, there have been a lot of changes in US visa policies, and there has been which have become stricter in certain cases. So we would like to ask Purvi what the students who will be traveling outside of the US to India, in all probability, what do they need to do, what documents they need to carry, and what are some points they should keep in mind before they travel outside of the US.
So, hi, Ishani. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. Um, yes, these times are tough in the United States, and travel outside for people who are on visas is a bit risky. If a student can avoid traveling outside the United States until he or she has finished her education and graduated, I would advise that first. And I know that's a bit stark because people need to travel. People are homesick. People have weddings. They want to see their old grandmother. Whatever it is, people need to travel. Yes, then when you need to travel, you need to make sure that you are absolutely safe in terms of getting documents and being prepared for your return. Because when you leave the United States, unless you have a criminal record or some other issue in your status, you're not going to be apprehended at the airport. You're going to be allowed to leave absolutely easily. But when you return, you need to be sure that you're eligible to return. For that, what I would suggest, or what I insist that our clients do, is make sure that they have a newly issued form I-20, sorry. And whether it is newly issued, it at least has to be recently signed by the designated student officer in the university. Every university is required to have a DSO who handles international students. So write them an email, book an appointment, go get a fresh signature, and make sure that all the information on the I-20 is accurate. Because now they're even checking your ability to pay your fees, even if you're halfway through your education. And let's say the estimate for your fees was $100,000, and you've used up 50,000 of that for your first 2 years of education. Even when you're coming back to continue your education, they're going to check whether you have the ability to pay the fees. So it's small things like that which were not being checked before, that are being checked now, and you need to be prepared for that. The other thing you need to make sure you have is a valid F1 visa with a valid passport. And I would suggest that your passport be valid for 6 months beyond your um, expected return to India. Now, that may be a tall order, but at least 6 months beyond the date of arrival is very important. Even if you're a student on an OPT or STEM OPT, you need to take steps, take these steps. In addition to that, even students who are on OPT or STEM OPT must take these steps. They have to have a freshly signed I-20. In addition to that, they should have proof of employment, that when they go back, they have a job to go back to, which is permitted on an OPT. Now, in the past, they were not asking for correlation between your field of education and your OPT job. But now, at the port of entry, Customs and Border Patrol, which we call CBP, officers are asking these questions. Okay, so you're working with XYZ company. What did you graduate? And now you graduated with a psychology degree, but you're working in an IT company. You've got to be able to justify that you are in the HR department, you're using your psychology for training and development, or whatever it is, but you've got to be prepared with those answers. have a continuing employment letter or an employment verification letter from the employer. And if it is a new employment, have an offer letter that is signed by both parties with you. Sometimes students travel with an offer letter that they've received by email, but it doesn't bear the signature of the employer because they hope to get it when they go and join. But that is not sufficient to show CBP. So these are some things that you really need to be careful about. And the last thing is you need to make sure that your CVIS record is active. And this is something that the DSO office can also help you check. So be sure your CVIS record is active before you leave the country so that when you return, you don't face issues.
You spoke about OPT as well, and at the start you mentioned that perhaps it's a bit safer if travel plans can be, put off for the moment. So, would you say that is even more important in the case of students who are on OPT, and they should, try and not travel if possible?
Yes, I would suggest that if they are on OPT and STEM OPT, they do not leave the country. And this is for two reasons. One is, of course, immigration. When you return, you're going to be grilled. The other reason is that when you take a 2 or 3 week vacation, your job is already in jeopardy in America because in America, people are very, very easily replaced. And it's always employment at will. You really don't have a fixed term contract or anything like that. So, my advice is if you want to gain that OPT experience and or you hope that that OPT will convert into a new job in the future, into a more permanent or a more long term job in the future, my advice is stick to that dream. Don't then get attracted by small pleasures in India or transient pleasures in India because your bigger dream is your American dream, and then you need to stick to that.
Right, that was very insightful indeed. If you could also talk a little bit about, at the port of entry when returning, what could be some of the questions that the students can face in case there's a secondary sort of interview? Uh, what should they be prepared for so that, they don't get caught unawares and they are ready
Right.
for any kind of difficulties that
Right.
could come up.
Right. So Ishani brought up a very good point. That is secondary inspection. So when you arrive at the airport in the United States, you meet one officer at a window, and usually within a few seconds or a couple of minutes or maximum a few minutes, you are cleared for admission into the country. But sometimes you are taken into another room for extra questioning, and that is called secondary inspection. When that happens, you're going to be grilled in detail. At that time, we are seeing that officers are even asking for proof of enrollment at the university. They're asking even for accommodation proof that do you have a dorm room that you're going to? Do you have a lease agreement where you can go and stay? All this they want to see to ensure the bona fides of the student. Now, if you've got a remote job and you're working, let's say in Detroit, but you're working for a company in New York, all those situations, even though you're an OPT and even though you're allowed to do that, all those situations can create problems. And when you're on STEM OPT, they also want to see what is your training program, etc. Because part of the STEM OPT extension is you've got to show them what the company is going to do. So the company is supposed to prepare a form and give it to them. So it's a good idea to carry that form with you, and you need to again be ready to prove that your STEM OPT or your OPT is in line with your education.
Right. Very quickly, again, I know that maybe it's a little bit repetitive because you've said it all, but a quick checklist of what are the documents that a student, either who's attending classes or on OPT, should have with them when they are returning back to the US from a trip to India.
Sure. So, what I would suggest, okay, I'm going to read out a list in two ways. One is a list that is mandatory, and that's for students who are currently enrolled and completing their education. And then there is a recommended list for these students. So, mandatory, valid passport, valid F1 visa, original I-20 with a recent signature from the DSO's office, university enrollment letter, and your CVIS fee receipt. Recommended, transcripts from your past education if you're in the middle of your studies, proof of financial support, bank statements, sponsor letters, evidence of money in the bank, or evidence of fees already have been paid to the university, housing lease or dorm agreement, and now I would also suggest that they carry a return flight ticket with them. That's a good idea to carry that now. If they are on STEM OPT, in addition to all these documents that I mentioned, they must also have an EAD card with them, the physical card, an employment verification letter, recent pay slips, a job offer letter if it's a new hire, and proof that the job is related to the field of education. In addition, if you're a STEM OPT student, you need Form I-983, which is the training plan I mentioned earlier, evidence of the E-Verify employer participation, because the employer has to participate in the E-Verify program to sponsor students on STEM OPT. They must have that. So I think these are the documents that they must travel with.
All right. Just one quick last question. So you did mention that your advice would be to try and avoid travel, outside of the US. But what about? I mean, vacations are coming up. What about travel inside the US? Students could be traveling to visit friends, relatives, tourism, etc. So when they're traveling inside the US but away from either their campuses or where they're doing their jobs, again, is there like a quick checklist of documents that they should carry and anything that they should be prepared for?
So, mostly travel within the United States is safe, mostly, but except for Hawaii and Alaska. And I'll tell you why. So, travel within the States is safe, but if a student has a drunk driving record or has any other violation of the laws, I would suggest they don't travel by plane. Because when they travel by plane, their record gets pulled up by the travel security agents, the TSA officers, and everything is visible to them on the screen. And there are officers, ICE officers at the airports, ready to apprehend such violators. So if you have anything sketchy in your background, either stay put at home or drive. And why do I say avoid travel to Hawaii or Alaska? Because if you travel to Hawaii and there is a airline situation and the flight is diverted to another country, then you're going to find it difficult to get back to the United States. So do not travel to Hawaii. Do not travel to Alaska. Same problem. Flight gets directed elsewhere. It goes to Canada. You're going to find it difficult to get back to USA. Now we get questions from many students who ask us, "What about traveling to Mexico, Canada, Costa Rica, etc.?" Now these are all considered contingent countries to the United States, and generally travel to these countries was not a problem. And when they came back, it was just called visa revalidation, or the I-94 was revalidated, and they were just admitted back into the country. Again, I tell you, please avoid this, because one never knows what is going to happen. So, a small social media post in your, in your record, on your phone, on your online record, could also get you returned. Like, you will not be allowed to enter the country, you will be refused admission. So I would advise against such travel. Now I want to just touch upon that social media bit, because it just came to mind that when students are returning, in addition to the documents they should have, what they should not have is also important. They should not have social media posts that are anti-immigration or anti-Palestine, I mean pro-Palestine or anything like that, because those are being construed as anti-national for Americans or America, and they are being denied admission. Their social media accounts should be open to the public. They should be set to public viewing settings, and their phones and laptops should be clean. If they have written an article that is pro-Palestine, it may not have been published in the United States, but if they've written it, it's either online or it's on a print publication, but they have a soft copy in their laptop, they could be in trouble. So these are some of the things that they should not have with them. Don't have pure, like clean phones, like don't clear out your phone completely. Don't close your social media accounts either, because these will be viewed suspiciously. It is unlikely for young people not to have a laptop, not to have a mobile phone, and not to have social media accounts. So you should have them, but you should sanitize them.
Right. Thank you, Purvi. I think extremely useful tips over there, and it's going to benefit a lot of our viewers. Thanks a lot. As always, a pleasure talking to you.
Nice talking to you, Ishani, and thank you for having me here.
Yeah,
And good
I
luck to
think,
all the students who want to travel. I wish you all have an enjoyable trip and a safe journey back to the US.